Well, good afternoon. This is Dave Crocker on Warriors, Hard Chargers, and Patriots, connecting the little dots to the big dots. I am I'm privileged and maybe even a little humbled by my guest today, a young man by the name of Danny Gomez, who joined Carl Vinson in January of '99. Um, there are a lot of people who get to go through life. I'm probably one of them that didn't have a lot of challenges in my young years, my teen years. I was pretty insulated from a lot of the tough decisions people have to make at that time, and just sort of focused on things that were, the traditional things people do when they're high schoolers or teenagers. And what's unique about Danny, and he's going to tell the story here, is Danny came from a different place. And to his credit, he recognized that he needed to come from that place to something better, or where his life was going to be just different. We're going to work from there to his Navy days and how that influenced family and other decisions he made in life, because I think he's got a really interesting story to tell. So, Dan, I'm going to ask you, before Navy, now, before boot camp, before any of that, um, what were you doing in life? Did you know who you were? Did you have a sense of where you wanted to go? Just sort of a discussion around those three questions. Can you talk to that? This is before Navy.
Okay. First off, good afternoon. Thank you
Good
for having me
afternoon.
here. Well, before when I was in the Navy, I had a pretty troubled childhood. I struggled a lot. My father passed away when I was very young. Unfortunately, I kind of went from house to house. Friends, family, whoever would really accept me. But because of that, I started having a lot of anger issues, started having basically a chip on my shoulder, and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I got involved into drugs, I got involved into gangs, just did whatever I could to survive. And I felt so much the need of belonging, I guess, that, as I mentioned, I just got into the wrong crowd. And it was difficult because, without the support of leadership in my family, and we did have leaders, don't get me wrong. It's just it was absent for me because I was always going from place to place, house
Right,
to house. There was really
right.
no um, security nor stability. So, but yeah, I went through a lot. Going through that during the time growing up in the '90s in Long Beach, California. Seeing my wife in Compton, California, there was always a rivalry, so even that alone was pretty difficult, but somehow we made it.
hmm So you really didn't have an idea. You knew sort of who you were, but you didn't necessarily like that person. Is that a
No,
fair statement?
yeah, correct. I didn't, only because just the things that I was getting involved with, a lot of my friends, even some family, just seeing how their lives started turning out. Like in my family, for instance, there's quite a few that actually had violent deaths, or basically died a lot earlier than they should have, you know.
Right.
And so I saw that path. I seen a few friends of mine killed in front of me. I myself survived a few drive-bys. It was pretty difficult, but as I mentioned,
Can
the
imagine.
simple fact that, I saw where it was heading,
Right.
and the lack of discipline itself. I mean, we were just kind of running free, running wild, but I saw where it was heading, and a lot of people were either having an early demise or they started doing time from a pretty young
Right.
age.
And I want to congratulate you for choosing a different path. I always tell people you went from one gang who had colors and a code to another gang, being the Navy, who had also colors. You were in V1 division, so you were wearing flight deck jerseys most of your time on the flight deck. And we have a code around honor, courage, and commitment. Completely different codes.
Yes.
One is destructive and one is constructive. One is character building on the good side. One is carrier demise on the other. And so what got you then from that point of recognizing where you were and who you were? What got you into the Navy?
To be honest, it was a few things. First and foremost, it actually has to relate with my wife. When we first met, we started dating pretty young. But a few months into us dating, I ended up getting jumped. I got jumped by a rival gang, and that really just messed me up. It messed me up pretty bad physically. I remember I was down and out for a few weeks, and I was surprised that, to be honest, I survived. My wife was actually the one who took care of me,
Mm-hmm.
just like, who actually helped me out and did what she could.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually led me to really appreciate her, because I feel that one thing I lacked as a kid was nurturing,
Yes.
discipline and nurturing. So,
Yep.
I lacked the father figure, and the mother as well, so it was pretty difficult. So when she did that, the nurturing aspect, it really helped me out, to try to, it was, how can I say it? Continue the relationship with her.
Yep.
And shortly after, well, I mean, two kids, hormones and all that, she
Yep.
ended up pregnant.
Yep.
I was still pretty young. I was 17. She was 16. And yeah, so I figured, okay, well, I have a baby on the way. I know what it's like not to have a father, and the last thing I want is for a child, of mine to experience any of that. So I decided to go ahead and join up. I had another cousin who actually convinced me as well. I was like, hey, you know what? It's not a bad idea, to join up, to get out of this. And so I did. I ended up joining, just to be able to secure something for my wife, for my child, make sure if anything ever happened to me, they were taken care of, but also to be able to start a family and just get out of the environment that I was in.
Very powerful. I mean, what a great young man you were to make that decision. So you had to go to boot camp.
Yes, sir.
Your family, your bride has stayed in California, went to boot camp. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So the reason there's a family separation element that enters this too. You were working pretty hard to get where you needed to go. And again, my hat's off to you. You get to boot
Thank you,
camp.
sir.
Well, you're welcome. You get to boot camp. What happened at boot camp? What evolved? What made you change? What did you notice in terms of the things that were now being constructive, vice destructive? What happened at boot camp in terms of your view of one team, one fight, the camaraderie pieces? What did you get out of that experience?
Um, I would say first and foremost the discipline, mentally, physically, to be able to achieve a common goal amongst your peers. A lot of the shipmates that I had while I was in boot camp, they were great people. I got a chance to meet a lot of people there, and being able to go ahead and, as I mentioned, achieve a goal or to support each other when we were struggling. Because to me, it was a huge culture shock. I'm sure it is for everybody, but
Hmm.
that type of discipline was something I was not experienced to. I got, my beat downs, don't get me wrong, but it was never explained, hey, you're messing up. So, you have to be disciplined. Obviously, boot camp's not necessarily like that, but I mean, for the most part, that's what I got. And the discipline mentally and physically, and also to be able to support one another in any endeavor, whether it be, just to try to achieve what was it, the laps, the mile run or a couple miles run that we would do,
Hmm.
or even do some of the drills that we would do as typical stuff that you would do on the ship, but it did help me out a lot, having peer support, having people that were there guiding me, as well as allowing me to be physically fit to be able to handle it. And it was because a lot of the times it was because of other people helping me out. And then when I was able to, I was helping them out in whatever way I could.
One of the things I think I visited boot camp on numerous occasions, and even in my days when I was working my way up to be in the Navy. That environment sort of makes you vulnerable, right? It
Mm,
basically makes you need other people,
yes.
and a lot of people don't like to get into that. They feel like that's a cowardly way out. I mean, I don't need anybody. I'm strong. I'm powerful. I know what I'm
Mm,
doing. But really, one of the things that I got out of watching battle stations, for example, was that come to realize that you do need the person on your left and the person on your right, and it's important that you know what the person on your left and your right are doing, so you can all work with each other to make the sum of the parts greater than the whole. And I think that that was probably one of the biggest things I got out of it. And it sounds like that's what you got out of it too, in terms of when you came on board the ship, because you were pretty prepared to work in that kind of environment, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I totally agree. The amount of camaraderie that I had in boot camp, it allowed me to appreciate it to where when I was going to go to your command at the time,
Yeah.
um, to be thrown in V1, because I came in as airman apprentice, so I really had no idea where I was going to go. But to be thrown in V1, blue shirting, and the first time I ever been close to jets, props, things like that. It was pretty scary. It was very intimidating the first few days, but thankfully I did have really good trainers with me, other blue shirts at the time, yellow shirts, even some crash and salvage guys. They were warning me, hey, this line is for this, and watch your head for that. So it was pretty interesting, as I mentioned, but what I really appreciated about it is that no matter what, somebody was there on the flight deck being able to help you out, or at least guide you, especially if you're a newbie.
And I think the discipline part, the constructive discipline part carries on too, because you just alluded to, there is no room for error on that flight deck. And so these young men who might have been screaming at you, weren't screaming at you because they were trying to be jerks, but they felt accountable to make sure that you were going to live through this experience, right? For a
Correct.
young man or woman to go on a flight deck for the first time, and you hear all those jet noise, and the helicopter blades, and the props, and the E2s turning. It becomes very, very confusing, and from a sensor perspective, very overwhelming. So hard job on V1 division for people who don't know what they're doing out there, because you were putting in how many hours a day do you think when we were at sea?
I I want to say it was at the worst 18, 20 hours. At the least 14 to 16. It just
Yeah,
depended. It
those are
just depended.
long days
Yes.
doing some great work and some dangerous work. What 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 about the ship now? So if I think of boot camp as sort of like undergraduate school,
Hmm.
now you're getting out to really practice those principles and things that you learned in boot camp, and see how they apply in a completely different, an operational environment, if you will. What about the ship and your shipmates? Uh, Further emphasize the things you learned, or did you learn some things that were totally different from what you learned at boot camp? I mean, how was that experience on the ship for you?
Well, for the most part, in the ship was just I would say like a larger scale of what boot camp was. You get a chance to meet people from all different dynamics, different backgrounds,
Hmm.
different circumstances of why they joined. I met former gang members myself, while I was in there, and
Sure.
and it was kind of funny because we actually would say, hey, back in the street, we'd be enemies.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it just, but it is what it is. Hey, we're in the Navy, like it's all
Right.
blue and gold here. So but that's just for instance, I met people. I had never been out of the state before I joined the service, and so I met people from all walks of life, different states. And what's funny is that I was able to go ahead and really meet eye to eye with a lot of the same things that I valued at the time. But this was after boot camp, and being able to get to know all these people and really just support them in whatever way I could, and vice versa. They would support me. I had friends in every single division practically.
Right.
So
Right. And you remember our captain's calls, right?
yes, sir.
They were
Yes,
pretty
sir. They were
awesome, were
some
they
of the
not?
best. Yes, sir.
We had some fun. We just had a rock time fun, because I got so engaged with you and every one of you, because I owed so everything to you people, because you're working so hard. And once in a while I see a smile on a face, and little cheering going on for maybe a shipmate that did something, or just the ship at large was pretty important. And I just so thoroughly enjoyed the cultural migration of everybody into this one team, one fight thing. Um,
Mhm.
so I use the phrase all in a lot. All in to me means, I won't say what it means to me. I like to hear what it means to you, but when I say I'm all in, or you say to me I'm all in, what's that mean to you?
It means giving 110% at least. That means being willing to do whatever it takes, mentally, physically, to be able to achieve a common goal, whether it be for your own personal benefit or for the benefit of others. It doesn't really matter if it's all in. That means you're in it to win it, and only until the mission's complete, so to speak.
That's 110% at least. I like the way you said that because sometimes it requires even more. Um,
Hmm.
so you were only in for that tour, and then you got out of the Navy, correct?
Yes, I did my 4 years.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that in just a second. The reason I'm asking the question is, you raised your right hand and took an oath when you're at boot camp. I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and
Or,
domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and to obey the orders of the president and the officers appointed over me. So help me God. Did those words, I mean, the first time I think I had to recite them, or maybe the first time I even gave the oath, I sort of went through it at that speed. The only reason I went through it at that speed now is so I could keep the time under
mhm.
control because I have a couple of questions to ask. But did those impact of those words? I mean, did you sense that you were serving an ideal versus a person or a king or a queen or a president? What did the oath mean to you? Because
No,
you probably had to take a pledge of some sort when you joined your gang, right? So there's a big difference.
initiation, yeah,
Yeah,
but pretty
okay.
much the same.
Yeah, so
Um,
what
Go ahead, sorry.
no, no, what did the oath mean to you?
Um, well, when I did the oath, at first, again, I hadn't been introduced to boot camp, so I knew it was something serious, something I couldn't back out of. So I figured this is going to be beneficial in the long run for me, mentally, physically, to be able to do that. um Once I was actually in, and I saw the changes within myself, and
Hmm.
not only that, being able to go back to my hometown and see people still doing the things that I was trying to avoid doing, or
Yeah,
at least wanted to stop.
yeah,
And I'm seeing that, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, the some of the ideals that they had, it was kind of like a twisted, distorted view.
yeah,
But as I mentioned, once I saw that as a comparison, and I started seeing, hey, we're actually serving something greater than us, self-sacrifice, for the common good. And I do believe it's for an ideal, because not one person, really would have that power, to
yeah,
just, have all these people serving for an indefinite amount of time.
right,
So that's the reason why I feel like it's definitely an ideal, whether we think or not, it's irrelevant. It's for the protection of the country, but more so protection of, or taking care of the fellow
right,
sailors around you, the
right,
people that you serve with. Because at the end of the
right.
day, when it gets hard, really, it's the only person you can depend on is the guy right next to you or the girl right next to
100%, 100%. And you spoke very eloquently to two of our core values, courage and commitment. You just enunciated on those for about a minute and a half there. I'm so glad you did. And the honor piece, of course, is when you raise your right hand, you swore to support and defend, because that was you putting your word forward that you're not going to you that you were going to be there, as you just said. So that's what I like about our core values that are actually attached to something.
you.
They have fidelity and
I strongly agree.
credibility, right? I mean, I wish there's so many companies that I've been around that have core values that I can't associate to anything within the corporation itself. Okay, so this is the second part of the interview that I'm having with Danny Gomez. We lost the audio as we were finishing the first part, so I'm going to try to hopefully integrate these two together, and it'll be seamless to you, because what he said in the first 20 minutes is so powerful. I don't want to lose any of it. If we have to, well, we can always come back, but we'll see. So Danny, you had the one tour at on Carl Vinson. You got out of the Navy after that. Can you again expand on why you decided to get out?
Um, it kind of went back to the original decision on why I went in. After my 4 years and after enduring freedom, we knew we were going to go ahead and go back out to sea. And coincidentally, me and the wife had already been trying for a second child, and I had already been absent for enduring freedom tour. Probably that whole year, I want to say we were
Mm-hmm.
out 10 months, 10 and a half
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm.
So being away from family, as I mentioned, is something I didn't want, for my child to go through, being away from her father. And so we decided, okay, you know what? I think, we tried, we want to go ahead and not do another sea duty. We were hoping for shore duty, and at the time, the billets were
Mhm.
just not available.
Right.
So we decided, okay, we'll go ahead and I'll get out. And coincidentally, the day I put in all my paperwork, we found out the second child was on the way.
How
And
about that?
so we're just like, yeah, we figured everything happens for a reason,
All right.
and we were blessed for that.
So you have 2 children. How old are they now?
My youngest is going to be 21, and my eldest is 25.
Are they both girls? I know you have 1
Yes,
girl. Okay. Yeah.
yes,
So, one of the things I always ask people, not to put you on the spot, but I think, one of the things that I talk to everybody about is power of presence. You have a tremendous power of your presence, and I know that your wife does too. But this is something that we don't often talk to our kids about. If you've never had that conversation, if you had, good on you. But you haven't, I would always encourage you to sit down with them and just remind them that every time they do something or talk to somebody, or the way they react to things, all of that is people are noticing, right? So I
hmm
was always aware that on the ship, that people are going to have opinions about me based on how I reacted to different things. So a couple of times at captain's calls, I had to actually apologize because I overreacted to things, and I didn't want people to think that that was the norm. So I suspect that your daughters are very well grounded because of where you came from, and the fact that you want them never to have to experience that life. But do you have those conversations with them on who they are and how important they are and the power of their presence?
I do. Maybe not so much in those words, but I do try to, I tried as best as I could to install the values
Right.
that I had, but also to show them that, we're all here, just the same things that I learned in the Navy. I try to put that into perspective for them, that we're all here as one team, one family,
Yep.
to be able to support each other in any endeavor, to guide each other, and also discipline, and also for me, for instance, as a father and even my wife, we also hold ourselves accountable and
Absolutely.
teach them the same thing. Is like, hey, I made a mistake, I apologize, and maybe we weren't, the best when we were younger, but we were also growing too, and it doesn't excuse it, but we validate what you're going through, and we're trying to make things better. So
If they're
for
learn, if
them,
they're
we're also teaching them that.
And if they're learning from that, then you got it. I mean, the fact that you talked about accountability to your kids. I mean, I've never met your children. It'd be great to meet them someday, because I think, quite frankly, I'd just like to tell them how great their dad is and how great their mom is. Your mom's not in this discussion here right now, but I know how much she has supported you and how much she means to you. And I just have to say I love her just for that, not without ever having met her. I love her already because of that. So,
Thank you,
um,
sir.
well, you're welcome, and God bless her and God bless your kids. Um,
Thank
this is what it's all about. I think there's a lot of people in this world right now that haven't held themselves accountable to anybody, and they haven't assumed responsibility for anything. And you picked up both of those traits in pretty rapid manner, from the days you decided to join the Navy to the days you got out to today, when your children are 21 and 25 years old. So really proud of you, Danny. And it's
thank
been a
you,
real
sir.
pleasure to talk to you. And um, we're connected, and we're shipmates forever. And that means that I'll do anything I can for you, and I know you'll do anything for me. And that's a great feeling to have when you in this world today. So I think we're gonna sign off. Just stay on the line with me for a couple minutes, Danny, and
Mhm.
thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
No, thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
All right,
Much
shipmate. Talk to you in a
appreciated.
moment. Yes, sir. Hang on for a second now.